Hello and a really big warm welcome to you to this module where we take a look at configuring DNS zones in Ubuntu 2004. My name is Andrew Mallett and I'm your Pluralsight instructor that will help you guide you through this module. And of course, we're going to be taking a look at configuring DNS on our Ubuntu 2004 systems. We'll be taking a look at the default DNS configuration on our Ubuntu 2004 systems, which is a caching-only server. We'll be taking a look at some of the DNS tools, such as Dig, that we can install. We'll look at setting up a DNS caching-only server, but for the network. So installing our bind tools and leaving it in its default configuration for caching only, where it doesn't actually store any DNS zones. We can look at securing DNS, allowing different networks to be able to query our DNS server. Before we start adding in our own zones, looking after our own DNS records. The scenario is going to be working with Ubuntu 2 as our DNS server. Ubuntu 2 will also be its own DNS client, but we're going to set up DNS client on Ubuntu 1 to resolve names from Ubuntu 2. Every Ubuntu 2004 server is in fact a DNS server, so if we take a look, we'll be able to see that on the IP address 127.0.0.53, yes, the IP address .53, it will also be listening on port 53. It's the systemd resolved that is listening on that. And that acts as both a DNS server, but also manages our resolve configuration, which then helps our DNS client be able to resolve names of DNS servers. We'll see this listening on UDP and TCP, but usually only UDP is used for DNS. We'll be taking a look at listing out our resolve.conf. We can see our name servers in the resolve.conf, but that in effect is going to be a symbolic link to different files. And we have actually different files that it can link to, and we'll see that as we go through. But we can also use the resolvectl command, part of our systemd ecosystem, to be able to review our configuration. When we look at the default DNS, we'll be able to go through and list our listening TCP and UDP ports. Including the option P, we have to run as root, but we're able to list the process behind it. And we're going to be able to see the process behind our DNS server is the systemd resolved service. We can list out our resolve.conf. As we say, this is a symbolic link through to back-end files, but it will then show where we're resolving to, and it will be our local host. If we look at where the link is pointing to, we can see the default link that it attaches to. And we can also use the resolvectl command to be able to go through and show settings relating to our DNS client. As a simple test, we can use Dig. Even without putting any options, we'll be able to see the top level zones coming back from the internet and which servers look after them. Importantly, we'll be able to see, though, which server was queried. And that really is the definitive way of finding out which DNS server our client is resolving to. If we want to move away from the default configuration, we can configure our DNS client to point to different DNS servers, and that is going to be configured via netplan. On my system, we're using the 50 cloud-init.yaml, where we're picking up DNS from DHCP. We can leave the top lines as standard, so we get down to DHCP4 true, and we add in then DHCP4 overrides. We're overriding some of the DHCP4 settings, and we're saying don't use DNS. We can add then our own name servers and their addresses. Here it's a list, so we're adding in the 2 Google servers, as well as adding in a search domain. The search domain can be used if we try to access hosts without a fully qualified name. We can then append this to the end of the host name. That's all that we need to add in, so then we're back to the normal settings that were in the file by default. Now, having made the changes, we can use netplan and apply. But these settings aren't going to show in our etc and resolve.conf. So to make sure we are using this, we need to create a new symbolic link. We need to point etc resolve.conf to a different file. So we can use sudo and ln to create a symbolic link -s. We're using the force, so we replace the existing etc resolve.conf. And we're linking now to run systemd resolve and resolve.conf. This is the file that is going to be written to via our net plan configuration. Once we've done that, we should be able to see our settings inside of the resolve.conf. And of course, using the dig command, we're going to be able to see that we are now querying the Google server rather than our local server. So we have been able to configure our DNS client the way that we need. And the trick is understanding that there are different files in the back end that we can link our resolve.conf to. Now, to really understand this, though, it's the hands-on experience that is going to count. So do join me in the next clip where we're going to dive out to our command line on Ubuntu too.